Welcome guys, Tony Maritato here, physical therapist, and in this video I'm going to answer a question straight from the Facebook Total Knee Replacement Support Group. So Kathy was asking, and I'm going to read a little bit because it's a long question, but it's got a lot of great information. Kathy was asking if there are other positions she can work on stretching her knee into knee flexion beside what's going on right now. So right now, just to give you guys watching some context, Kathy gave us some history. She had a left total knee replacement November 22nd, 2020. She had a manipulation under anesthesia on the 13th of January. Today is January 22nd. So not too long ago. What is it, 9 days? Her flexion was 60 degrees at the 6-week mark. So definitely needed the manipulation. She had been up in the early 90s, but guessing there was some scar tissue started to build up. My range started to drop. My first appointment after the MUA was 95 degrees of flexion and 3 degrees of extension. So that's a huge improvement. That's awesome. In the OR, I was at 130. That is a really important kind of understanding, realization that has to happen here. So I've had patients, and I've shared this story, where in the OR, they get 125, 130 degrees of flexion. The day after, they're back down in the 90s. There is no physical way your body can produce scar tissue that's going to restrict that much range of motion, almost 35 degrees of range of motion in 24 hours. It's just not going to happen. So you have to ask yourself, you have to stop for a second, forget everything we think we know about the human body and anatomy and physiology and all that stuff. Just stop and say, does this make sense? Is this scar tissue? What else is going on? What is causing the limited range of motion? And so absolutely, there's going to be a guarding response because of pain. There's going to be other influencing factors that are going on. So we always blame inactivity and scar tissue, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's more to the story that we just don't know, we're not aware of. So anyway, back to this. She's been going to PT every day, which is incredible, and doing home exercises every hour. I mean, this is what I see. Like the person who does so much, does everything right, pushes themselves like crazy, and they don't get the range of motion that they expect. They tend to blame themselves. They think they did something wrong. And then right next to them, there's somebody, God love them, who does none of the home exercises, doesn't follow any of the therapy instructions, and they're walking around at 125 degrees of flexion, 0 extension 2 weeks after surgery. It is beyond the scope of what makes sense. So just take it for what it is. Don't try to rationalize the irrational. We don't know enough to fully understand why some people gain their range and some people don't. It's definitely not something you're doing wrong. It's definitely not something that you need to do more of. If anything, I think people do better when they do a little bit less if they've been doing too much already. But let's keep going through the story. So she's saying, I'm currently at 105, which is amazing. 13 days after the manipulation, you're at 105. That is awesome. I had two something but significant knee injuries. Oh, freak knee injuries 10 days apart in August. That's okay. PT indicated that these knee injuries could make the recovery slow. The issue, I never had manual massage for the first 6 weeks. That's okay. I do it. I do a lot of hands-on, but not every therapist does. And I wouldn't say the clinical research supports that you need it, that it's beneficial. I think it just feels nice. I think it helps to relax the tissue. I think it's a benefit, not a requirement. So she goes on to say, where are we here? So she didn't have any in the first 6 weeks. This past week, the PT started stretching me out in prone, pushing my knee toward my butt. So it's a very common condition. The patient lays on their stomach. The therapist is typically behind the patient, one hand at the ankle, maybe one hand down kind of at where the knee is at the top of the tibia. And you're assisting the patient moving the knee into flexion. Usually this position starts when the patient has more than 90 degrees of flexion. I've shared videos showing you how to do this yourself with the strap, how to do it yourself, putting your toes up against the headboard or a wall. So it's not an uncommon position, but certainly it's a vulnerable position. And that's one of the things that I learned as a therapist, is that if I put patients in a vulnerable position, immediately the fear kicks in, the guarding kicks in, immediately, just reflexively. Even if they know me, trust me, like me, the patient is still gonna be fearful and resistant. So I find that in this position in particular, there are some strategies that reduce some of that. Now, I can't demonstrate it for you, Kathy, right now, but I can tell you that if I get a chance in the clinic next week, I'll do it. But if the therapist has one hand at the ankle and the other hand behind the calf muscle, so not on the shin bone, but on the calf muscle, what I have found is that if I pull against the calf muscle while I move the leg into knee flexion, it's a little more comfortable. Whereas if I'm just pushing, that tends to get that guarding response and of course pain. So anyway, I got distracted. Let's see here. So she was saying that, you know, put her in tears. She was sobbing. She finds herself scooting forward on the table, trying to escape the pain. I see that a lot. Certainly you don't see it in my clinic, but I see it a lot in other clinics. I got the impression that I needed to do this kind of massage if I was going to increase flexion. I wouldn't necessarily call it a massage. It's a stretch. It's a manual stretch. But anyway, I cannot do this anymore. And you are the person in charge. That's your decision. If it is at that point, it's not helping. If I did something to the point of pain and I felt resistance in the patient, I'm done. There is nothing more I can do. I cannot overcome the pain response. That's why they do a manipulation under anesthesia. That's why it's not just a manipulation, because you cannot have that pain response. Once that kicks in, the benefit is done. You're not going to get any more benefit. So you don't need to do it. You shouldn't do it. I said there must be other patients that can't tolerate this position. What do you do? The patient didn't, or the therapist didn't really answer the question. He wants to keep moving and not allowing him to do the manipulation. It's impeding this. So basically, what you're saying is you're going to talk to the surgeon on Tuesday. We agreed, you and the therapist, that the treatment plan for the weekend, you're going to do your stuff at home, see what happens on Monday. Every hour I'll be doing prone stretches, or chair stretch exercise. I'm not sure what those are, but I'll be holding that stretch position 4 to 5 minutes for prone, few stretches in a chair. Feel like this may help stretch out the muscle. It's really not a muscle problem, you know, and that's important to understand. Let's talk about the structures of the knee for a second. You have muscle, no doubt, but muscle is more like a rubber band. This kind of limited range of motion is not typically a muscular problem. You've got the connective tissue. Generally speaking, this could be considered the fascia, the white, thick connective tissue that surrounds the muscle, the joint capsule, which is kind of the ligament. Ligament attaches bone to bone. The tendon attaches muscle to bone. You've got multiple soft tissue structures that are not muscle, but that are very dense, very, very fibrous. Certainly you can consider some of that scar tissue, but this stuff is tough. And remember, we need it to be tough. We don't want your knee to be so mobile that you take a step and your body collapses, right? Your knee has to be strong enough to support you jumping off a park bench. This is a lot of force. And so we're always trying to find this balance between how do I gain range of motion, but how do I maintain the integrity of the knee? And you've heard me say before, a loose knee is much worse than a tight knee. I would take a tight knee for myself every single day of the week over a loose, unstable knee, because a loose, unstable knee will buckle, you will fall, you could break a bone. A tight knee, you're just tight. It's a much better scenario than a loose knee. But the point being, this is not really a muscular problem you're dealing with. It's a connective tissue problem. Potentially it's a guarding, like a nervous system, just a reflex, right? I tap a reflex and your body responds. You don't have voluntary control over that. That's the stuff that we're dealing with here. So you were saying you're so afraid that's going to develop more scar tissue and might have problems with the manipulation. Your goal is to get to 120. So here's the deal. Again, I'm going to ask everybody watching who's dealing with these kinds of challenges, take a moment, step back for a second, forget everything that you've been told, forget everything that we think we know, and let's try to look at this problem with fresh eyes. And so when I look at this, I say, okay, what's my objective? I need my knee, and I always use my finger as the example. I need my knee to bend, right? And if I can't bend, like as I try to bend my finger, it tightens up as I get to the end range of motion. Now, how do I get that tightness to improve? How do I get more range of motion? Well, we know repeated exposure for prolonged duration at a low enough intensity that we stimulate, that we can maintain the position, but at a high enough intensity that we stimulate changes in the tissue. The position can be repeated lots of different ways. So if you imagine yourself laying on your stomach with your knee bent and your heel coming back toward your body, that is no different than you kneeling on your bed, right? Imagine hands and knees, you're kneeling on your bed, the bed's a nice soft cushion, you're rocking your hips back toward your heels. So in the one position, your heel is going toward your hip, toward your butt. In the position I'm describing, and I've got videos and I'll post them, your butt is going toward your heels. The benefit of the hands and knees position over the laying on your stomach position is your hip is flexed. So by flexing the hip, we're allowing the musculature to relax a little bit while we try to bend the knee. You can get into any number of these positions. So I'll record and share other videos, but laying on your stomach, your toes against the headboard of your bed, you're sliding your body back toward your headboard. If you can visualize this, it's the same as the therapist pushing. I really think kneeling, for me, kneeling on a cushion, kneeling on a couch, kneeling on the bed is the absolute best scenario. And then getting into a deep squat. So one of my favorite ways to work on knee flexion, I ask my patients to buy a 6-inch step stool, little plastic Rubbermaid step. I ask them to put it in the bathroom next to the commode, next to the toilet. And every time you go to the bathroom, you're going to the bathroom multiple times a day, you're gonna sit to go to the bathroom, right? You're gonna put your foot up on that step. And so that's providing multiple exposures to that knee in the flexed position for a brief period of time, minute, 2 minutes, you're working it back. It's absolutely doable. Finally, there's thousands of ideas that could be shared here, but another option, if you haven't seen it, I just saw in the Total Knee group, somebody posted that they're using the JAS device, JAS, Joint Active Systems. This device is a device that Lots of patients use after a manipulation. You can put it on, you can set the level of resistance, you can use it up to 3 times a day, 30 minutes an episode. You can rent the device, buy the device. Sometimes insurance will cover the cost of the device. But if you remember, I did the interview with Russ from Russ's Right, that channel. Russ did this device, he had the manipulation, he did great with it. It's slow, it takes time, but at the end of the day, it's not the kind of thing that you can push through the pain. More pain does not provide more gain. There are times where we push through the pain. This is not the time for that. More pain does not provide more gain. We need to be smart. We need to understand that it's not about doing more. You're already doing more than most. It's about doing things properly, kind of resetting what we're doing, asking some hard questions, and then figuring out, okay, what does my body respond best to? I hope I gave you some useful advice. I'm sorry I can't do demonstrations. I'm at the home office, so I'm not in the clinic, but if I get a chance, next week I'm back in the clinic, I'll record some new videos, share some new ideas. There's tons of videos on the channel already. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you are watching this and dealing with the same challenges, post your challenges in the comments so other people can see what you're dealing with, what solutions you found to the problems you're dealing with, and just air your frustration. Sometimes it just feels good to vent, right? Just get it off your chest. And in the process, like the video, subscribe to the channel, help me grow so I can reach more people and answer more questions like this. I will catch you guys all on the next video. Thanks so much.